Um, Welcome to For Fork's Sake Live. My name is Danny Bryant, and I am joined this evening with some amazing women, where tonight we're going to talk about the socioeconomics of food in all of its forms. I'm going to pass it over to my good friend Dawn. She's going to say hello.
Hello, hello. I'm Dawn Sam Alden, and I'm very excited to be talking to you about this today. And we have some lovely guests. We were supposed to have a fifth. Psyche Forson-Williams had a last-minute thing come up that she had to deal with ASAP, a fire that she had to put out. So we are hoping that she will be able to jump onto the chat at some point midstream, but we're going to start moving without her just in case. Just in case she's called away for the whole time. So, ladies, go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we'll go around again and we'll talk about what we're eating tonight.
Well, I am Stina Peterson from Los Angeles, California. Yay. Should I say something else? Hi.
Stina is a writer and an activist and a former and possibly again freegan.
Ooh. Yes, freegan and dumpster diver.
A little bit about that.
I am Dion Benson Smith, and I don't live too far away from you. I live inland. I live in Claremont, Claremont, Pomona, California. I am a professor of women and gender studies and public policy out here at the Claremont colleges.
Fabulous, fabulous. Thrilled to have you on board. All right, so we usually say just a little bit of background. Danny and I started this July of last year, so we are coming up on our 1 year finish line pretty soon, but have always been interested in doing some work on women and food and how women and food are viewed by society as a whole, and how that relates to our body self-images and our body politics. So Danny runs this wonderful company called Knife and Fork in Chicago, and when I saw her online, I thought that is the woman that I need to do this with. So we hooked up, and here we are on our 8th episode. Very excited. So today I made this fabulous dish that I thought I was going to eat tonight, and spent 2 hours making it last night, and it came out tasting terrible. I am not eating it today. I have instead supermarket sushi.
Oh.
And then I also got some olives, some Kalamatas, and some green olives. And I'm going to be finger fooding it tonight while we talk.
Yeah. So yes, I'm here in Chicago in my bedroom. Usually I'm out of my bedroom, but my roommate is studying for the bar, so I'm giving her lots of space and enjoying the breeze. I made a green smoothie. It kind of looks blue because it's in a blue cup. It has mango and pineapple and coconut yogurt and cashew milk. And some spinach, because it's a beautiful kind of late spring day in Chicago, and it felt like smoothie weather.
Awesome, awesome. How about you, Tina?
I am eating. I got a plate full of food here. A couple different things.
Wow.
So I was going to make fresh baked bread. It's taking a really long time to rise because I was also experimenting with homemade yeast, and so then I thought this was happening at a slightly later time, and I was going to prepare something else. I was quickly becoming really hangry, really hungry and angry, and I said to my husband, please make me something to eat. And so that's what I have. And this is, we kind of did a little dumpster diving in our own fridge because this is some like rice and tofu leftovers from one of our roommates who went out of town, and we wanted to eat it before it went bad. And some macaroni and cheese with tomato because he was afraid that the other stuff would be gross.
Delicious.
Yeah.
Nice. Dion, how about you?
So I made, I take any opportunity to make warm salads when my kids aren't around because they won't eat warm salad with me. So I made, I don't know if I can show it, it's warm salad with fennel, a walnut and sweet potato and egg, and then it just has a nice little vinaigrette on the top of it.
I also love warm salads.
Yes.
They're so delicious.
I like it a lot, and it's hard because they won't eat it. They'll eat salad, but they won't eat it warm. So,
That looks really good.
you know.
Interesting. Yeah, it does. Delicious. All right, so today we're talking about socioeconomic drivers to purchasing food and how what your circumstances, both your social and your economic circumstances, how that affects the kind of food that you do eat and can eat. So just want to start it off talking about food deserts and the idea of what is a food desert, because this is a topic that, or a term that I only recently, well, last year or so, I think was probably the first time that I had ever heard of it. And I posted on our Facebook page a couple of links that talk about food deserts. One is the American Nutrition, the USDA definition of a food desert. And it's essentially parts of the country where you cannot get a hold of fresh fruits and vegetables and healthy foods. They go on to talk a little bit about how if there's nothing within a mile, so nothing that you can walk to, something that you have to drive to in order to get fresh vegetables, and also how those areas are usually populated by, instead of grocery stores that have fresh options and healthy options, they're usually populated by small convenience stores that have primarily prepackaged foods that are laden with preservatives and that kind of thing. Okay, so that's generally what a food desert is. I've been lucky enough to live in places where fresh food is within walking distance, and in fact, I actually chose a spot to live. Was able to choose a spot to live when I moved to LA, where I actually do have grocery stores within walking distance, a couple of them, which in LA is very unusual because we are a car city. But coming from Chicago, where I could walk to the grocery store, I really didn't want to lose that. Especially because now in LA I can walk to the grocery store year-round, not just in the summer. So I just wanted to throw the topic out there and see what you ladies had to say about it. And have you ever lived in areas where there were food deserts? And hi, Belmont. And that's Stina's dog. And you can talk a little bit about it from an academic standpoint, from your research and what you have, what you've studied about it as well.
I'm willing to hear what others have to say first.
Yeah.
I live within walking distance of fresh fruits and vegetables as well, both within a mile of a couple of fairly large grocery stores, and within 2 blocks of a smaller supermarket that has really great prices on fresh produce. And I've been pretty lucky to, like, in my entire adulthood, live within walking distance of that, which has been good for me because I have not owned a car for many years, and so it's very being or biking distance of everything that I need, and thankfully where I'm at, I am able to do that.
Yeah.
So,
Very cool.
I mean, personally, I mean, I've been lucky as a child, even when we lived in the city, because in the city, before the cities changed, a lot of people lived within walking distance of a grocer or a bodega, right, that sold some sort of fresh fruits and vegetables. And then it was the movement to supermarkets that really started pushing the phenomena of food deserts within a city. And then also within rural areas, the movement within supermarkets kind of took away. Because I lived in rural Iowa for about 5 years, and that was the first time, ironically, when I lived in rural Iowa, that I lived in a food desert. Although I lived on a farm.
Right.
Because I didn't live within walking distance of fresh produce. Most of what's farmed in Iowa is not farmed for consumption of people. It's farmed for consumption of farm animals. So I lived on a soy and corn farm, but the corn wasn't farmed for the consumption, for our consumption. It was farmed for hogs. And I lived close to a Monsanto factory.
Wow.
So I was not within walking distance, and most of my neighbors were not within walking distance of fresh produce. And that's the irony of most rural Americans, and most of the rural Americans who live in what we generally consider the breadbasket they're in food deserts.
Wow.
And so we don't think of food desert as a rural phenomena or a farming phenomena at all. Yeah. And that's because we pushed away and we pushed to this supermarket and a packaging phenomenon. So that's also, when I was in Iowa, was the first time that I actually started studying food deserts. I had colleagues who were studying food deserts when I was at the Maxwell School in Syracuse, and I'd heard of it, but even there, and I lived in a very poor neighborhood, as most graduate students do, for the real estate.
Right.
You know, but we lived very close to a very small, independently owned supermarket that serviced the neighborhood, and it had fresh produce, and you could walk to it. So it never, ever entered my mind this concept of a food desert.
Oops.
Or what went on and how hard it is for you when you don't live close to not only fresh produce, but when you can get just a banana and a fresh orange, and the only place you can get it is the local gas station. So the only fresh produce that you can get is really hard and, you know, is overripe or underripe.
Yeah.
And it's overpriced. And so one of the things that I've become concerned with also in the definition of food desert is, once we get past the notion of locality, like the geography of food desert, then there's this problem of price.
Yeah.
Right? So the price of fresh produce. So so one of the things I've started pushing some of my students who are interested in food deserts and are looking at this is to also look at the amount, because the amount that I was lucky when I lived in Iowa that I had a car, and I would drive an hour and a half outside of town just to get quality fresh produce that was reasonably priced for my family. And when I moved there, all of the professors were like, you need a deep freezer. And if you can, hook up with a farmer outside of town so that you can, you know, that's the only way you're going to get something fresh.
Yeah.
And reasonably priced. So this is what it's like to actually live in a food desert with means. And people who are living in the middle of a food desert without means. And there's all kinds of levels to this that support it, and all kinds of research about how we support this and we push this with our Farm Bill policy. So this is not accidental. That
can you expand a little bit?
We have a system.
Sorry. Can you expand a little bit about the Farm Bill policy and how that contributes?
Well, the Farm Bill, I mean, just to be really brief, the Farm Bill contributed to the push in food deserts in two major ways, and then there's all these minutiae. But one of it is within the Farm Bill, just to use Iowa as a microcosm, right? The fact that you have all of this arable land in Iowa, but most of what's farmed in Iowa, I mean, Iowa produces mostly pigs, right? And it's pig farming. And most of what's produced in Iowa through farm subsidies is the Farm Bill produces and farmers do what's subsidized, right?
Right.
And so you have this large subsidy program in the Farm Bill that pushed farmers into small farmers who couldn't support sort of these localized farms to produce and mass quantities of things that people both did and didn't need, that we were exporting grains, all kinds of grains. So it pushes us more and more to a grain diet. And grains are not fresh fruits and produce, right? It pushes us more to the grains that go into stuff, right? So in the Farm Bill, there's all these things that are subsidized for larger corporations, not just Monsanto, but General Mills, PepsiCo, that are subsidized through our food stamp program, our nutritional programs. So, for instance, you can use, and there are people who are trying to change this in policy, so this is another track in which the Farm Bill supports this. I can use, if I were on SNAP benefits, I could use my SNAP benefits at Pizza Hut. I believe here you can use it at Carl's Jr., you could use it at any number of fast food restaurants, but I can't use it at a farmer's market for fresh produce.
Right.
It's very difficult for me to use my SNAP benefits. I can use my WIC benefits, which is also federally supported. The Women, Infants, and Children's Nutritional Programs. I could use that for any number of grains and cereal. And grains and cereal, again, means that now I'm going to hyperproduce grains and cereal. So I can use that for grains and cereal, but I can't use it to buy strawberries, kale, and produce for my family.
Right.
So in policy, we have this thing. You incentivize, and you will get what you create incentives for. So we created large incentives for productions of certain types of crops. And these are the crops that we are overproducing, and then we oversell. And the inability to find fresh fruits and produce are not, and fresh fruits and produce, by the way, are not the crops that are subsidized within the Farm Bill. So if you look up the Farm Bill and you go back into the history of the Farm Bill, and we just, I want to say it was 2008 was the last time that we, don't quote me on that, it was somewhere in between 2008 and 2006, somewhere in the mid-2000s. We redid the Farm Bill. So in that you could see the major crops that are subsidized and supported by the federal government. And if you do what we call longitudinal analysis, so you do this sort of historical analysis of the crops that were supported by the U.S. government that were majorly subsidized, you see this spike in production. And you can also see, and you could walk around literally, and I've had students do this, the grocery store with your cart, and you can see how much of what, what we have on the shelf. So how much do we have in terms of cereal,
Right.
bread,
Well,
milk?
what I think is so interesting is, you're right. I've always, when I've heard the term food desert, thought about it in more related to urban cities, that talking about the neighborhoods within a city and how some neighborhoods are the food deserts. And so I'm fascinated by that is a very obvious. And I'm actually from a rural community and now live in Chicago. And the neighborhood I'm in, I would say, of all the neighborhoods I've lived in Chicago, is the only one without a large chain grocery store. And so my grocery shopping, the closest to me is like an upscale Italian fancy food grocery store, and I would never buy produce there. It's so expensive. But because, I will take the bus to the Jewel, but then take a cab home or take an Uber home after I load up. So I think about all the other families in my neighborhood who can't do that, and are, going on the bus like a mile and a half to the nearest large store. But yeah, all the neighborhoods I've lived in Chicago, I'm in Logan Square right now, and the biggest thing that they always talk about is that there's always a grocery store coming. That's going to be the next development of the neighborhood.
Yeah, and then there's always, and you can find, and that's the other thing, is you look and you see the number of grocery stores versus the number of check cashiers or liquor stores. In rural neighborhoods, it's the number of grocery stores versus number of. I used to have a lot of opinions about convenience stores, gas stations, until I started seeing the services in gas stations and how much gas stations in rural communities actually do service food items. And I realized that without the gas station, most of my neighbors who had unreliable transportation, particularly in the wintertime, would never.
They sell milk, they sell eggs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You might even get some bananas or apples there if you're lucky.
Exactly. They wouldn't have anything. And so, I mean, I think what's interesting to me about food deserts is there's this intersection of geography and class. But what's interesting, when you said that you were a freegan, what becomes interesting to me about that is then the need to seek opportunities outside of the classic ways in which we understand gathering food. And this is what I meant by looking at the gas station, and I really had to look at the gas station in a different way, right? What was the service that the gas station is providing, or what service does, not just having a garden, right? Is that not everybody can have a garden outside, right? What are the other ways in which we can understand gathering food or sharing food or acquiring food, right? Because like you said, there's always supposedly a supermarket coming. There's always something coming, but it never does. So we need to shift the conversation. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah. Well, in Los Angeles, didn't they recently make it legal for anyone who wants to plant whatever they want to in the little grassy median strip between the sidewalk and the street?
That just recently came down, that area in between the sidewalk and the street, which technically belongs to the city, but because of LA law, it is it's the homeowners or building owners' responsibility to maintain that strip, even though the city technically owns it. But they recently passed a clarification, because it wasn't really clear on the books, but they clarified that area could be used to plant vegetables. And so there is, because we live in LA where it's it's the weather is so wonderfully supportive. There is a guy, and I'll see if I can find the link again. He did a TED Talk where he talked about his organization. And that's what he does. He goes from neighborhood to neighborhood, and he encourages people or teaches people or just goes ahead and does it himself and plants vegetables in those strips just, for everyone. Whenever they're ripe, just take them, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, find these places where we can make food happen locally. And
that's what I was...
Yeah, right outside your front door. I mean... Yeah, Danny, because back in Chicago, we could only do that in the summer, of course. You can't plant vegetables on your windowsill in February like you can out here in LA.
Right. And everything has to be raised beds as well. So in LA, you can plant directly into the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
I also saw somewhere where instead of having farmers markets where, and I want to say it was, there's one in California in further out near Modesto, but maybe Wisconsin they were doing this. No, Oregon, where they have a mobile farmers market.
Yes.
So you drive it into a city or you drive it out to a rural area. I mean, I remember growing up and my grandparents had a farm in Virginia and driving around the area, and they had tons and tons, like closer to like Charlottesville, farmer stands. It wasn't a technical farmer's market. It was these produce stands, right? Where you could buy produce and maybe somebody would bake pies or something like that. So you could get pies. But then they got shut down, my grandmother said, because like they didn't conform, the pie baking didn't conform to health code regulations, because you can't bake a pie in your kitchen and then sell it.
Right. Yeah. Because
at the fruit stand.
Yeah.
Back.
Have you guys heard of? There's a thing. I know they have
a food truck, a mobile produce truck.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's a thing here.
Go ahead, Stina. Sorry.
Oh no, I was just gonna say there's an organization here in LA. They're trying to do. I don't know what it's called exactly, but it's basically a food swap, and it's just a group of people who have agreed to get together, like once every 3 months, and bring food in swappable portions, and with like ingredients listed on the food, and basically just trade food with other people. And so it can be home baked goods. And everybody like signs an agreement ahead of time that they won't hold anybody else liable for like food poisoning, and this happens on a semi-regular basis here in LA, and I don't know if it happens in other cities, but that's just another way of sharing food.
Yeah.
Oh, that's like a mom's dinner club. I was part of one of those.
Cool.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating because it connects back to like the whole new culture of commerce sharing, so of ride sharing,
right.
Of sharing your home, of sharing your car, of sharing your food, and just the new type of industry that's being created around that. That's fascinating. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I just posted a link to the South Bronx Mobile Market on our Facebook page, which is an example of a mobile farmers market. They raised money, I believe it was on either Kickstarter or one of the crowdsourcing, crowdfunding websites, and they raised money and they bought an old bus and they converted it into a mobile farmers market.
Wow.
Read about it there. It's very cool. Very cool.
Awesome.
So, Stina, why don't you tell us a little bit about what freeganism is and your experiences with it?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, a true freegan, and I was never a true freegan, but a true freegan would, only eat what was free for them. So either given to them or dumpster dived, or made themselves. I wouldn't spend money on food or really anything, because freeganism encompasses stuff as well as food. So I was never to that extent, but I have done a fair amount of dumpster diving in the past, not so much recently, because it's been harder in Los Angeles. I've lived here for about 4.5 years. But I fair amount of dumpster diving in other cities that we've lived, including Seattle and New Orleans, and tried a little bit when I lived for a time in Magdeburg, Germany. Did a little bit of dumpster diving there, but they were more economical in their waste at the grocery stores in Germany. So dumpster diving was not quite as lucrative there. Whereas dumpster diving is incredibly lucrative at grocery stores in the United States. And this article that I read an article on food waste recently in the LA Times, was talking about how so much food is thrown away before it even reaches the grocery store shelves, because produce, if it looks blemished, will just be discarded before it even hits the shelf. And that's also what gets thrown away, is like if in one carton of eggs, one egg breaks, but spills over the rest of the eggs, then the entire dozen eggs will be thrown out. Or in one case, we were dumpster diving at a grocery store in New Orleans, and in like a crate of Prego pasta sauce, one jar broke and spilled over all of the rest of the jars, so the entire crate of jars was discarded. And so that was a really great haul. But in Los Angeles, it's particularly in the neighborhood that we live in, which is East Hollywood, it's been a lot harder. Most of the dumpsters around here are kept locked up, or are, for the larger grocery stores, they're the trash compactor type dumpsters, which are impossible to sort through. So that's been more challenging. But I'd love to get back into it. It's one of those things that it can be tricky to do if you don't have a car, which is kind of funny, because it's not something you would expect to need a car for, or that you'd expect, like, if somebody's into dumpster diving, then maybe they're also into the idea that they don't want a car. But some of the better grocery stores to go dumpster diving in tend to be in maybe more upscale neighborhoods, and so that's not the neighborhood I live in, so it's harder for me to get to the grocery stores. And it's something you want to do generally after hours, so that there's a little bit of anonymity and cover of darkness to it. We never broke into any places. We would only access dumpsters that were accessible. A lot of times dumpsters in like inner city stores, like Trader Joe's, say, which might have a parking garage, the dumpster will be in the parking garage, and accessible that way. But you generally just want to wait until there's not as many people around, so that you can dive at your leisure.
Well, would people try to stop you? Is it illegal to take food out of dumpsters?
It's not. I mean, I guess it probably varies on a city by city, in a city by city way, but in most cases it's not illegal to take food out of dumpsters. however, a lot of grocery stores will have no trespassing signs, and so then you could be held accountable if you've had to break into an area, or if you've cut underneath or through a fence to get to a dumpster that's not accessible. We've never gotten in trouble in any sort of serious way. In Seattle, dumpster diving is pretty common, and the Trader Joe's employees at the Trader Joe's where we used to dumpster dive on a semi-regular basis would come out and just say, like, okay, this trash can, this is like our syringes trash can from the bathroom, so I'm going to put it in the corner here, like, be careful. But the employees there were really cool about it. Maybe because Los Angeles has such a larger homeless population than like any other city, more dumpsters are just kept in locked away places.
Your story,
But,
so it reminds me of, I used to work at a school and did an after-school program where the cafeteria would provide snacks for the kids. And so they might be like peanut butter crackers in a little package, or graham crackers in a little plastic package, or little ham and cheese sandwiches in plastic pre-packaged. And the kids often like wouldn't eat them. So they wouldn't eat their sandwich. It would stay in its package, or the graham crackers, or the crackers, cheese crackers. And they would just be thrown away. Like they would just, it's snack time, you don't save it for the next day, throw away. And so I started to like save them after, and I would take them home, and I'd try to give them away. But like, I would come home with like 37 ham sandwiches, and you know, what are you gonna do? And I asked, I was like, why? And they're like, that's just the rule. Like the health code is like, you can't keep the food, you gotta throw it away. And I thought that was crazy.
Yeah, it's horrible how much food gets wasted. Yeah, it is crazy. I think, and a lot of grocery stores are responding as more and more people become aware of how much food we waste. They are responding by saying that, like Trader Joe's again, for example, also Fresh and Easy, I know, has a policy that for all of like their prepackaged salads and like things that are meant to like be consumed like as a meal, when they on their expiration day, they get donated to local homeless shelters and food banks.
That's great.
So that was my question. Do you run into, I mean, have you tried, or do you run into any trouble with arranging with any of the stores to pick up and maybe like the jar of Prego, the crate of Prego sauces, and say, you know, I would like to arrange with you to pick these up if they're fine, or, you know, so I can take it to a homeless shelter, or I'll take them off your hands before you put it in a dumpster. Because I know, like, at my son's school, they get charged per pound. Like, they have a certain amount of weight for trash, and so anything that's over that weight, they're getting charged. So they've tried to do a bunch of things to reduce the amount of stuff that the kids are just throwing away. Like you're talking about the unopened sandwiches and things like that. And they have this thing called the share box, which has its own sort of problems for kids with allergies. But at least it's an attempt to try to have kids do things. Instead of having them throw the sandwiches in the trash, or throw the graham crackers and the cheese and crackers in the trash, they'll put them in the share box, and then any child can go into the share box and take out cheese and crackers. If they don't, you know, if they want Pop-Tarts, they can get Pop-Tarts, that kind of thing. And it's their attempt to try to reduce the amount of waste that goes actually in the trash can.
Yeah.
So have you talked to any, I'm just wondering, any of the stores about that? Because I know they pay here, at least in Claremont, per pound. So they're paying
Interesting. Yeah, I have not. That would be interesting to do, but I have not. And I guess I mean, what stands in my way a little bit as far as like trying to do something larger scale is the fact that I don't have a car, so
That makes sense.
I wouldn't have any way of transporting things like to a shelter or to a food bank.
And I think it is also, you know, and more research would have to be done on this, but I think it is also probably a legal issue because, and actually on the Freegan website that I posted to our Facebook page, it does have a section on the legality of dumpster diving. So answering your question, Stina, you actually answered Danny's question perfectly, which is that once it becomes trash, it is in the public domain. And that is that's actually something that was established in response to FBI searching people's trash for evidence. So they established that once you throw it away, it's fair game. But there are local ordinances and posted no trespassing signs that can introduce additional infractions that you can be guilty of, rather than just taking stuff out of the trash. Just being there becomes, you know, an infraction. But yeah, if they intercept the food before it gets to the trash, then probably the supermarket is still on the hook for liability. But once it gets put in the trash, then it's fair game.
So is the lock and the kind of trespass sign, are those essentially to like the fear of if they kept them open and encouraged people to take it, they would lose business? Like I'm trying to wonder, like, it's behind the store, right? Customers can't really see it. So what is the harm of keeping it unlocked and letting people come and take as they will?
I think it's still the fear of liability, because if it's still on store property, if anyone were to become injured in their attempts, then the stores are afraid that they would be held liable for that person's injuries.
That makes sense.
And also,
but I mean, I think that's fear. It's also some fear mongering, and I don't like. I've never actually heard stories of anybody like getting in trouble or being charged for dumpster diving.
Yeah, and it's also purely also on a practical basis. I would imagine if people come in and dumpster dive and make a big freaking mess and don't look after themselves, if they like throw stuff out of the dumpster and throw it all over the place and not clean up when they're done, then that would be pretty annoying for the employee.
Yes, I think you're liable in terms of your tort liability if you can foresee an accident. Say if your dumpster is open and somebody jumps inside the dumpster and breaks a leg, and you haven't made an attempt to keep the lid closed by locking it, so you haven't made an attempt to make the dumpster safe and keep that from happening. So the locks and everything can be construed as an attempt to keep everyone safe.
Right. Wow, fascinating. It really makes me want to go. You want to go down to my local Trader Joe's at 9:05 p.m. and see what I can see.
Yeah, I've gone to Trader Joe's, and they've been so nice as to get boxes when I'm moving.
Yeah, if you're moving, they'll give you boxes. Absolutely. They're awesome. They're awesome. So we're coming on towards the end here. Wow, this hour always goes so fast. But I wanted to talk about like some other suggestions for if you are in a food desert. You know, what are some possible solutions? If you can have a garden, that's fantastic. You know, even just putting I have a little do-it-yourself compost box. I bought a
There are
plastic bin from, the local hardware store for $7, and I just put my vegetable leavings in it, and stir it up once a week or something, and leave it out in the sun, and it composts. And about a month ago, I decided that I wanted to grow some tomatoes, so I just took a couple of empty flower pots, the plastic kind that that comes when you buy a plant before and then you replant it when you get it home, the plastic pot that's left over. And I just scooped a couple of those full of dirt from the compost pile and started watering it. And so now I've got 12 tomato plants.
Cool.
That grew from my compost that were, I had thrown away a rotten tomato, and now it's a tomato plant. So
Wow.
composting is actually a fabulous way to get yourself some seeds.
That's lovely.
That's awesome.
And I'm just growing them on my, the plants I'm just growing, because I'm in California, I can do this. I'm just growing them right outside my front door in little pots. But,
there are some
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
There are some wonderful co-ops, and I mean, we had them in Iowa. They're out in California, and I'm pretty sure they have some in Chicago, and they're at different price levels because this is now the way that people who have small farms. I know my grandparents did it, and they had we had a small family farm where you could buy into, and you could buy plot shares, and it varies on the types of plot shares that you buy.
Right.
And you can buy in with friends. So, and you get whatever's in season. And this is the part that some people like and some people don't like, right?
Right.
Because if squash is in season, then you're going to get a lot of squash. Because I have a colleague right now who does it, and she had a ton of kale. And I'm like, that's a lot of kale. She's like, kale, a farmer that I did the plot share with had a lot of kale. Like she's so sick of kale. She's giving kale to people. She's like, hey, welcome to my house. Here's a bunch of kale. And the nice thing about this is usually what happens is they either deliver it directly to you or they deliver this to a central location, right?
Right.
So that it then is someplace that you could walk to, like the library, or so they're driving it in.
Right.
And like I said, you can go in and I'll go to your website because there's a now with the.
Oh,
We lost her.
Did we lose her for a second? She might be coming back.
Oh no.
She did. She made me think, though. She totally reminded me about CSAs in Chicago and how that is a very popular thing, but not until this time of year. So it's like if you live in a food desert, you also live in like a seasonal desert where Logan Square also has an amazing farmers market, right? But it doesn't start up until a certain time of year. And so it's like between October and May, right? There's nothing. So that was a good tip.
Is that you, or is that Dion trying to come back?
I'm gonna put her on.
Yeah. Great. Well, she's muting.
Sounds good.
Yeah. The CSAs, that's actually a terrific model because if you pay for it ahead of season, and so not only do they have funds to which they can use to maintain their farm throughout the season, but they also know ahead of time what their demand is. They know ahead of time how many heads of cabbage they're going to plant because they have this many people that they're supplying. So the CSAs are really a terrific a really terrific model for getting produce to people that don't have access to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was just going to add that, like your growing of tomatoes, Dawn, that if you live in a temperate climate like we do, there is so much you can do with container gardening. Our neighbor, I live in an apartment building, and our neighbor has like about a, I don't know, 5 feet by 4 foot area where she has an amazing container garden, and she's growing so many different types of just both beautiful plants but also edible things, and it's just been flourishing over the past 3.5 years that we've lived here. And a lot of those things that you can grow in containers, even if you don't live in a temperate area, you could grow indoors if you're willing to give up some of your living space to growing things.
Yeah, a pot in your kitchen window. You know,
Mm-hmm.
that's a pretty common tradition, is to put a pot of herbs or something like that in your kitchen window so that you can cut fresh herbs. You know, parsley and basil and oregano and stuff like that. You can cut fresh herbs right into your food, but you can also do some of the smaller vegetables that way as well. You know, you probably can't grow zucchini in your kitchen window, but
yeah, that's true.
but you could grow a small tomato plant or something like that. Yeah.
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 Hmm.
Yeah. I think about when you know, you talked about how you lived in Germany for a little while. Thinking about how I visited my aunt, my mom's sister, who still lives in Germany, and they live in it's a relatively small town, but it's not an agricultural town. It's mostly a commuter town and a retirement town. But everyone there, as part of their mortgage, you know, as part of their buying their house, they have the title to a small plot of land on the outskirts of town, and it's within walking distance of where she lives, where they can grow whatever they want. That's their garden plot. And so she grows flowers and she grows vegetables, and you know, once every couple of days, she walks over to the plot and sees what's ripe and picks it and brings it home and cooks it. And it's just a fantastic model that is just included with your house, your little garden plot. Yeah. So the idea of victory gardens and community gardens, I think, is something that really would all of us would benefit from that model expanding a little bit. And you know, Stina and I and Dion, also living in California, of course, all we're hearing about is the drought, the drought, the drought. And when you look at the statistics for the amount of water the country's or California's water that goes to growing produce for the rest of the country, it would be an enormous benefit to water conservation as well if people were more proactive about growing their own produce, things like a bunch of lettuce on their, you know, kitchen windowsill. That would help water resources as well. So it's a win-win situation.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord. All right. So I'm going to, it is now time to sign off. So while you gals say your sign-offs, I'm going to text Dion and see if she can jump back on to say goodbye.
And I also, I pulled up Dion's page, so we could also share a little bit about how to hear more about Dion. Dr. Dion.
Doctor. Absolutely.
Stina, do you want to start? What are you working on? What do you want to pitch? What do you want to promote?
Sure. The biggest thing I'd like to pitch and promote right now is a show that I wrote that is going to be a part of the Hollywood Fringe Festival. It's called Catherine, and it's a modern-day adaptation of Jane Austen's Northanger Abbey set in L.A., and we're going to be having 13 performances in the month of June, and you can find out all about it. Our short URL is hff15.org/2260.
Awesome. Chicago, my feminist play for young people is wrapping up this weekend, Worthy at Adventure Stage. It's our last weekend, Friday at 7:30, Saturday at 4. It's been a really fun and rewarding experience. That's all for me. I'm going to take a little bit of break during the summer, and then I can forward with some big projects kicking up in the fall. If you guys want to read more of the work by Miss Dion Benson Smith, the doctor, she has written a bunch of articles, but one of her articles that's been published is about African American women and public policy, called Jezebels, Matriarchs, and Welfare Queens, the Moynihan Report of 1965 and the Social Construction of African American Women in Welfare Policy.
And she's actually, Danny, she's actually back.
Oh, is she?
Oh, I'm back. Yes.
I was pitching you.
Yay!
I know.
I was pitching you. Were you so
You were
charmed?
doing a much better job of pitching me than I would pitching myself.
Well, tell us something we don't know, something secret you're working on.
Oh, something secret that I'm working on. Oh, I'm working on right now a project with a couple of colleagues on defining women's empowerment. And my colleague right now is on her way to Kenya to do the preliminary parts of the research, but I am working on the first parts of the article. And so we're going to do a comparative analysis of women, African American women and African women, and early empowerment analysis, because apparently African American women and African women, particularly Kenyan women, use a lot of the same psychological and spiritual and community building practices. And so we want to understand how that happened. So it's exciting. I'm excited.
So exciting.
Yeah, that is really cool. Awesome. Well, definitely keep us in the loop on that, and we'll post. We'll post about it when the article comes out, because that sounds so cool.
I will.
What are you working on, Dawn?
Oh my goodness. So I am also working on a show for the Fringe Festival. I'm doing this wacky little thing that we're calling 50 Shades of Shrew. It's a taming of the shrew that's set in a BDSM dungeon.
Oh my God, I love it.
So it's an all-female cast. We're looking at the dynamics of power and submission. So that should be fun. That is fun. We're having a great deal of fun in rehearsal, let me tell you. And what else am I working on? Oh, also working with a couple of writers on putting together some new projects for Vicarious Films, and hopefully, finally finishing up the final sound mix and the music score for a little 2.5-minute scene that I've been trying to get finished and posted on the internet for like 2 years now. It takes forever.
Yeah.
It does.
Well, I must say we are a fascinating group of women. Wouldn't you agree?
I agree.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Another episode of For Fork's Sake Live. If you're watching it live, thank you. And for anyone else, we hope you enjoy our chat. We know that we did. Any final thoughts, Dawn?
That's it. Look for us. Oh, our next one is going to be in a regular slot, which is the last Wednesday of the month, May 27th. And that will be on, the topic will be Mothers as Guardians of Children's Nutrition. So we're going to be talking to some moms, and I'm really excited about that chat. So look for us in a couple of weeks.
Well, good night.
Okay.
All right.
Good night.
Bye, everybody. Thanks for including me.